Henry Ford was born on July 30, 1863 in Wayne County, Michigan, a son of an immigrant family from Ireland. He dropped out of school at the age of 15 to work on his father's farm, not appealing to farming, and moved to Detroit to work and train with a mechanical workshop. Henry Ford returned to Greenfield after his father gave him 40 hectares, 10 acres, to start his own farm, did not like to work in agriculture and spent most of the time trying to build a steam-powered vehicle, and an agricultural vehicle. While he did not wish to remain on the farm, he returned to work for Addison Lighting and rose from trainee to engineer of the company. During his tenure, Henry Ford read an article in Science Scientist magazine about the German engineer Nicholas Otto, who built an internal combustion engine. During that time Henry Ford spent his free time trying to build a fuel car. It was the first car to be assembled in 1896. The vehicle was powered by an engine 2 4-stroke cylinder mounted on bicycle wheels and named Quadricycle. The vehicle had 2 front carriers and no rear carriage or brakes. Henry Ford sold his car and used it to finance his auto business. Henry Ford worked at the Addison Lighting Company for 8 years and retired from work, after which he was a full-time car manufacturer. He became a chief engineer and partner at the Detroit Automobile Company, which produced few cars. He founded Ford and worked for Henry Ford as an engineer, retiring after disagreeing with bank owners in 1902 and becoming the company with what is known as Cadillac Motor. After 2 unsuccessful transformers for a car manufacturer, Ford was founded in 1903 and Henry Ford was vice president and chief engineer. The company has assembled a few cars, with a group of 2 to 3 workers working on each of the company's manufactured parts or required by other companies. He built the Model A, 1903, and during the following years he built record-setting racing cars, some of which he led in motor racing. The first production of the Model T was on October 1, 1908. By 1918, half the number of cars in America had become Model T. Model T has the distinction that the steering wheel is on the right, which other companies later and to this day have taken. To cover the need for more Model T action, Henry Ford to assemble production accuracy, standardization, parts that can be replaced, workers section. In 1913, enter the mobile production line, assembly, in which workers stay in a place to add a piece or part to each car when it passes in front of them on the line. The group of workers supplies the required parts through a walk, calculated very carefully to enable the assembly line to operate completely smoothly. He divided the assembly line into 84 separate steps, and trains workers to do one operation. He conducted a time and movement study to estimate the appropriate time and number of workers required to complete the work. Henry Ford says the idea of the assembly line is dangerous to him when he was visiting one of the places dedicated to slaughter and meat preparation in Chicago. The carcasses were stuck in trolley alloy and moved to stand in front of a group of workers, where that group performed a specific operation to withhold a specific part of the carcass, and then moved the carcass to the next group that only carcass a specific part, so that the end of the line ended with the carcass's skeleton. Henry Ford's idea crystallized that he could assemble the car in the opposite way. It starts at the beginning of the line with the skeleton of the car, chassis, and then each group of workers installs specific parts when the car stops in front of them with the line, equipped with the required parts and trained on that specific process, so that a car assembled at the end of the line ends up, in a faster and more accurate way. The first production of the Model T was assembled in Detroit on October 1, 1908, and was then sold for $950, the price of which fell to $280 as a result of production and management style. Over the course of 19 years, 15 million Model T cars were sold in America plus 1 million in Canada and 250,000 in England, the most produced model that lasts for a long time after Volkswagen's Beetles. From 1908 to 1927, minor modifications were made to the T model design. By 1918, half of America's vehicles had acquired Model T. Ford's strengths are not being inventor but in the manufacturing procedures I create. Instead of the workers in one place assembling the car, a group of workers added parts to the car as it passed the production line. In 1914, he became the first autonomous driveway to take out a car every 93 minutes, instead of the usual 728 minutes. In the same year, Ford stunned automotive workers by paying the worker $5 in full-day pay. The wage for auto workers was $2.34 on the estimated 9-hour working day. Ford has not doubled the wage but has reduced 1 hour's working time to a daily working time of just 8 hours. This enabled him to make today 3 shifts instead of 2. Henry Ford faced many obstacles in running his company, insisting on expanding factories and reducing the price of the car, which led the company's shareholders to sue him in that regard. The expansion is not only what Ford was working for but is self-sufficient to manufacture car parts. For the manufacture of car parts, there was a need to own iron mines, transport such as ships, railways and parts manufacturing plants for motor, chassis, car interior parts and car tires. During 1920 Ford became the owner of rubber plantations in Brazil, fleets of ships, railways, coal mines, thousands of acres of tree forests, iron ore mines. In 2 decades, the car became available to most people, and farm owners became uninsulated, and the horse disappeared from the roads very quickly, which led to the dispensing of the cultivation of the horse's nutrients, straw, and cultivation instead of other cultivation, which led to a revolution in agriculture, and the spread of cities in remote areas began leading to a revolution in construction and ages, and roads and bridges were constructed to connect the country with each other, resulting in a revolution in communications. During 1925 Henry Ford produced 10,000 cars every 24 hours. But in 1926, as a result of Ford's insistence not to produce a new model and continue to produce Model T only, sales of Ford cars began to lose part of the market to General Motors, where Model T became an old model, and did not develop Model T in line with market updates. His insistence on not making modern modifications to the vehicle, such as the traditional transfer of gearbox speeds, instead of its own transmission, hydraulic brakes, instead of mechanical, 6, 8-cylinder engines, instead of 4-cylinder Model T, and the color of the vehicle as all the Model T cars produced were black. With Henry Ford's insistence not to develop, add or modify Model T, a group of automotive companies made a company named General Motors that produced many models in different colors suited to the diversity of tastes and choice of people that attracted the purchasing power of Ford. Henry Ford worked to run his company in his own way under his own control. He entered into disputes with company shareholders for wanting to do an expansion of the company using the company's profits to achieve this, as well as reduce the price of the car to make it accessible to all. He also entered into disputes with the workers' union in order to have full control over the management of the company, which led to confrontations between the security of the factory and the workers. After the Detroit auto industry workers' strikes of 1928, Henry Ford commissioned his assistants to look for the most resistant people to union organization. Ford brought in about 2,000 Yemeni workers to work at Ford in Dearborn, suburban Detroit. Henry Ford died in the spring of 1947 and had an 83-year-old, leaving behind an estimated fortune of $500 million to $700 million, a global car company, an affordable car, and a timeless legend.